Welcome back to another show of Breaking the Silence. I'm hearing an echo, so I'm going to close my door. Tonight we have Jon Lopez, who I haven't talked to in a very long time, except via email. And we met a long time ago at Ciro in Yvonne's support group. It was a great support group back then. I'm not sure what it's like today, but I know it was very helpful. It's kind of like the support group we have here. It's a lot like it, in fact. And I see all my friends and the community is here, and it's greatly appreciated. Hopefully you guys had some time to read my post today about you have no proof, because lately that's been coming up and people have been saying some stuff that I don't think is very kind. And in light of watching AJ last night on the Y-Files, big fan of his work and everything, but what he had to do in the Pascagoula case in Mississippi, Mary and I didn't really approve of. It was not fair. He's usually very fair, but this time he basically concluded that all of us have issues and we need help and we can help ourselves, but we're really not having these experiences. Neither were they. They were drinking and they had a bad night. And that's basically what he kind of concluded with. And it really surprised us. We didn't expect that from him. And Mary and I especially kind of took it hard because we're working with Philip Mantle. I mean, Philip Mantle is someone I've known for a very, very long time, since the 90s. And you all know about the work he's done for Netflix, about that story, about that case, and the book he just put out. And now there's another series that's going to come out in October. At least that's what he said he hoped for today. There's still an editorial, and we were asked to look at it before it airs to give an honest opinion about it. I'm sure it's going to be incredible because it's an incredible case. And I don't think that AJ did his homework. I know he hasn't done his homework on this subject matter, or he would know and realize that there really is something to it. So let's bring on Jon. Hey, Jon, long time no see.
Long time no see. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you just fine.
Great. Yeah, I've been following your podcasts recently, and I'm so glad I found you again. And yeah, it has been a long time, so I'm real flattered that you asked me to be on today.
I remember you were working on an actual a video game, wasn't it, for the subject matter back in the 90s? And I did a few animations for you and stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, it never took off, but that was a very fun time, very interesting, fascinating time.
Yeah, and you know that a friend of mine in the motion picture industry that was the effects supervisor for many of the Star Trek series plus Battlestar Galactica remake, he was trying to do a VR game, virtual reality game, where you wear the headsets, and Whitley was involved, and that never happened either. So, which is kind of a shame. It's not something that's beyond my grasp to do, but I am busy enough just doing this. If you've watched any of the shows, you realize how much graphic work I have to do. It's a lot. So in fact, last Saturday's was entirely animated and no dialogue. So
I still have that beautiful maquette you did of an alien gray that I keep on my dresser. It was given to me as a gift one time by somebody we both know, and I've had it all these years.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, there's a few of those out there and about. I know Chris Carter has two of them. At least I think he probably still has them. So I don't have anything from that era. Nothing. Not a darn thing. So, but I am going to make some new stuff. So, and there it goes. My nose right on tap. All I have to do is go on the air and hang out with a bunch of people who have close encounters, and my sinuses go wild. Never get it. So Jon, of course, you did a secret story
I did.
you sent to Mary, and here you are actually on camera coming forward and breaking your silence.
I guess so, aren't I?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, this took place back in the 80s when I was living in New York City in Brooklyn Heights. And it's hard to describe exactly what it was. I'm not really sure if it was just a very vivid dream or a lucid dream or an out-of-body experience or just exactly what I think the best thing I can say to describe it might be as a lucid altered state experience. That's about the closest I can come to it. And just to give a little bit of background, I've actually never seen a physical UFO in this physical reality. But I became fascinated by the subject when I saw the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still on TV.
Right.
And for some reason, I just resonated to it. And after seeing that movie, a very avid interest awoke in me in this whole UFO, UAP subject. And so I started reading every book I could get my hands on about the subject. Everything from the old classic UFO books to the Betty and Barney Hill experience to Bud Hopkins to Whitley Strieber a bit more recently. I just read everything. And so I kind of had a background and interest in the subject. But this dream happened again in the 80s. And a lot of my dreams, I have a lot of UFO dreams. And they all seem to take place in the backyard of the house where I grew up as an adolescent in Puerto Rico. And as some people may know, Puerto Rico is a hotspot for UFO events and sightings and so on and so forth. And so the dream took place in Puerto Rico in my parents' house. And as the dream opened, I was actually aware that I was dreaming. And I was aware that this was not a usual kind of dream. It was more like an out-of-body experience is what it seemed like. And I was walking down the hallway in the house, and I came across my mother. She encountered me in the hallway, and I asked her, I said, "Can you see me? I wanted to make sure that this was really happening, you know?" And so she said, "Yes, I can see you," which is very interesting because she didn't believe in any of this UFO stuff or psychic phenomena or anything like that. Yet in the dream, she said, "Yes, I can see you." So I kept walking down the hallway and went into the kitchen. My dad was there, and he pretended that he couldn't see me. But something in me said, yes, you can. I'm really here. So then I proceeded out into the carport. And at the time, the carport was open. It has since been covered, but at the time it was open. And I looked up at the sky, and I saw the most incredible, dazzling starscape you could ever see. And that's kind of how I knew that I wasn't in this usual kind of physical reality, that this was an altered reality, because the stars were undulating like in wave patterns, and they were all multicolored like jewels. They sparkled like jewels. And so I stood there for a few minutes and wow, this is amazing. So then I proceeded back into the backyard and headed out into the end of the yard. And I turned around to face the house again. And as I did so, these two black, like storage container type black boxes descended on either side of the lot, like one lot on one side of our yard and into the lot on the other side of the yard. And they came down and they had like these spider leg legs on them, so they kind of bounced when they landed, and they were all around the edges. They were festooned with colored lights, almost like these Mack trucks that you see at night on the highway that have that are all ridged with all these lights all around them. That's kind of like what these things were. So I stood there fascinated looking at them, and I got this telepathic message that said, "This is the only state that you'll be able to see us." And so that may explain why I've never seen a physical UFO. But I thought that was quite interesting. I said, well, okay, I'm fine with that as long as I know you're real. And the reply came back and said, oh, yes, we're real. So I was like, okay, great. I'm fine with that. So then I headed back towards the house. And the way that dreams sometimes happen, the scenario changed. And I was still in the backyard of the house, but it was now daylight, and the time period shifted to the past when my parents and I had first moved into the house. And so at the time, the housing development we were in had still not been completed. So there was houses still being built. And on our street, there was still no landscaping, no lawns, no grass, no anything, just basically the house and the dirt lot. And it was mainly clay. It was a clay lot. And as I approached the carport on my left-hand side, I suddenly saw this round saucer like object to the left. And there was a hatchway in the saucer. It was open. And just outside the hatchway were 3 or 4 little, what I'll call aliens, little guys, little entities about 3 or 4 feet tall. They were wearing jumpsuits, and they had large heads, and they were hairless, they were bald, and they were digging in the clay with these tiny little shovels. And one of them discovered that I was staring at them, and he didn't seem to be too happy. I got that distinct impression that they'd been discovered. And this one guy didn't like that. But then I went and I hid behind this concrete partition. You know, all the houses in our development were made out of concrete. And so I hid behind this one partition, and I was peeking out. And as I was peeking out, suddenly the sensation came to me that I had my hand up against the concrete wall, and I had my cheek up against it. And I could feel as though it were absolute reality. The roughness of the concrete against my face, my hand up against the wall, and the realization came to me in the dream. It's like, oh my God, this isn't a dream. This is really happening. And at that point, I started to wake up. I started to regain consciousness. But it wasn't all at once. It was a very gradual kind of coming to awareness, like limb from limb by limb. I could start feeling myself coming back to reality. And when I fully woke up, I just lay there and I couldn't move. And I was in awe, saying, oh my God, what have I just experienced? So to this day, it's like, well, what was that? And where was that? Was it real? Was it fantasy? Is it a real experience that maybe I remember as a dream, or what? So that was that's been my what I'll call my anomalous experience. And to this day, I still haven't seen a UFO, so I don't know. But I'm still absolutely intrigued and fascinated by this whole area of study. So,
I can see why. And thank you, Alchemist. It's very kind of you. Jon, that's one heck of a dream. I mean, you remember it in vivid detail.
Yeah, minute detail.
Yeah, and you when you were describing feeling the concrete, and how it occurred to you that this is real, not a dream at that time. I know that all too well. I'm sure many people do here. And you have to ask yourself, how is it you can remember a dream for so long in that detail? Because, most people, on the average, myself included, I dream all the time. I'm a very vivid dreamer at night, and um, I remember them when I wake up, but within a few days, no. But when I wake up, or let me go back, when I'm having a dream and I say, "Oh my God, this is real. This is not a dream," and then I wake up, I never forget those. I can tell you every single one of them. They stick with me forever because I think that they were real.
Yeah, a couple of the details that I want to mention about the little guys that I saw. They weren't your typical grays. Their skin was more like a ruddy, adobe colored, tan color rather than a gray color. And even though they had large eyes, I, I, I can't be sure if they were totally black, although they might have been. But those are just two discrepancies that have always stayed with me as part of the detail of that dream.
Okay, well, we've heard that described before.
Really?
More often than not.
Yeah.
And Anne's asking, how can we tell dreams from reality? Well, Anne, I usually do it by realizing that some of my experiences happen in dreams, and when I remember them, and I think that's what's happening, is that I have forgot about an experience I've had, and then I'm dreaming, and it comes out of my subconscious, and that's why it's so real. It's like being under hypnosis. It comes back out, you relive it, you feel it, you smell it, you taste it, and I don't think those are dreams. They're the recall of something that really happened, or because you were asleep when you were taken, you'll remember it that way. But the thing about it is, Anne, is that you will remember it always. Whereas other dreams, you'll forget about them after a while.
Yeah. When I was younger and I first began my interest in this subject, I was convinced that it was all nuts and bolts, that it was all a purely physical phenomenon. And as I've grown older, and the more I've heard people's stories and basing this on my own experience, I'm thinking that this phenomenon goes way beyond the purely physical.
Oh, yes.
And that it definitely is part of, I believe, an interdimensional
Yes.
Phenomenon, and not purely physical. And interdimensional can go way beyond any kind of theory. It which to me explains a lot of how that can seemingly pop in and out of reality and do all these maneuvers, and how later on experiencers develop all kinds of psychic abilities and things like that. I think the experience itself alters a person's consciousness in ways that maybe before they didn't even realize about. But once they've had the experience, it's a very transformative kind of event. And because it is interdimensional or ultra-dimensional, or however you want to term it, that this does affect our psyches and our consciousness and our souls, if you will, so that it starts to include all this other phenomenon.
Well, we are both physical and spiritual beings, and so are they. And they've had a lot more time to evolve than we have, and they've certainly have a handle on both those realms better than we do. So I absolutely agree with you.
I,
And
I,
it's just kind of like childhood's end for the people on earth, that we really do have to shift into that world where we realize that when this physical body stops functioning, that we do continue and can continue and will continue, and that we're more than our physical selves. These beings, whoever they are, they have known this forever in terms of how long they've been around. I mean, they're not just technologically advanced, they're spiritually advanced. And that's a dynamite combination to have both.
yeah,
Sometimes,
really.
yeah, I mean, sometimes people say, well, if they're interdimensional and they're spiritual, then why do they need to abduct you physically? Because I believe they're physical as well, and I believe that what they're doing with us sometimes requires a physical um, um, intervention, for lack of a better term, to check up on you physically, your
Mhm.
well-being in this biological machine we're in. It's important to them for some reason. So
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some one of the comments there. Oh wow! So you've had more than one dream about this, and were most of these when you were young?
Yes. Most of them were during my adolescent years, actually. And they still continue, actually, to this day, every so often.
Uh-huh.
But again, they all take place in my backyard back in Puerto Rico. And so I find that very interesting. So maybe something happened to me back then, and in the dream, I just keep going back to the same scene, to the
That's
same location.
that's very possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible. It's interesting the description of the round things coming down with the little feet on it, and they remind me of something that Whitley talked about in one of his books. In fact, we made a film back in the '90s where I did animation showing these log-like things that came out, and then they were all dark, and then they morphed into beings. So, I'm not sure what that was all about.
No,
So
I
you're
saw.
still having the dreams.
I still have them every so often. Yeah.
Have you tried um, going out in the backyard at night and just sitting and looking at the sky? And
Well, believe it or not, no. Um, where I live now, I mean, there's very minimal light pollution, but our backyard is has a lot of trees and stuff in it, so you can't really go out back and sit and look up.
right,
Um, I'd have to go out into the middle of the street in order to do that.
huh?
So I haven't done that in a while. But I will say that on occasion, when I have just stepped outside and looked up, I do feel a very strong sense of communion and
Okay.
and intelligence.
Now look down at the question that was put up on the screen.
Have you ever went back to your home place, that place where you grew up, the place where it all happened in your dreams? I did go back every so often, yes, to visit my parents, but they have since passed away, so I haven't been back since then. It's been several years now,
Right.
so I haven't been back.
Now you do know that. Are you familiar that I have to say that most close encounters experiencers, witnesses, whatever you like to call them, have this sense when they look at the stars, especially when they were young, that was a place that they considered home, or some place that they wanted to get back to, or that they
Mhm.
had a communion with it. We all
Yeah,
did, as far as I know. We all had that. It's very, very strong. Have you ever done a session with Yvonne just to see?
I have, yes. And I didn't continue with them because I wanted to be truthful and honest. And I really felt like I was making up the images and the memories and the thoughts that I was getting. And so I said, no, I don't really feel that these are my own memories. I feel like I'm confabulating them.
Mm-hmm.
So I only had the one session with her, and I stopped after that.
It does seem like that, though. I remember the first few sessions I did with her that I thought, this can't be real. Yeah, I had that same feeling, but then there were things that came out in them that told me it was different. It told me it was different. So, um, Abbott's talking about Pasadena and Mr. Parsons and Aleister Crowley. Love is a law. That's an amazing story in itself.
Well,
Well,
I feel complete with the experience.
that's good.
Yeah, I don't feel the need to try and probe any deeper into it. I guess you'd say I've embodied it and I've learned to live with it and assimilate it and feel quite satisfied about it.
Wow. Do you still attend the support meetings?
I don't. There aren't any really support groups out where I live. I live out in the desert in Arizona.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And your backyard's covered in trees. I mean, they've got their skies out there.
In the backyard. Yeah, isn't that funny?
I know. I mean, that's like, that's a hotbed out there.
Yeah, we live in a desert scape out here. And the closest city is Tucson. And I know that there's a MUFON chapter in Tucson, but it's a 45-minute drive both ways. And so um, even though I keep up with it online, more or less, but again, if there was something closer, I might look into that. But actually, I do go to another group locally with people who are interested in anomalous phenomenon and other things, but it's not a support group per se.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys should get together and go out somewhere in the dark where there's not trees and see what happens, because
do a sky watch.
Yeah, well, you might be surprised, because I don't know for sure, but just from listening to your story, it's so detailed, and that it's highly suggestive that they have an interest in you and probably still do. And I've found it often that when I'm out under the stars, especially with other people, that you'll get to see something you haven't yet. You think you haven't seen anything yet, consciously, but you might, and that might be really interesting for you because you're very comfortable with it. Yeah. Mike is saying, have they taught him anything?
Well, it's taught me that we're not alone in the universe, that we live in, that there are so many different planes of reality and existence that we're not always all aware of, but that it surrounds us and we're immersed in it and we're part of it and it affects us. We move through it, it moves within us, and that these experiences help awaken us to those other realities. And it's just for me anyway, a wonderful expansion of consciousness and my sense of life in the universe, and a knowing that life is everywhere, that we're not the only ones here. And to me, that's a very liberating an enlightening perspective. So,
It sure is, and it's really what the human race needs.
yeah.
And you can see, I think, quite clearly how people are affected by this experience. I mean, they could be bopping along in life, never had experiences like we have had, and they might be somewhere where they have a sighting, and not just a little light in the sky, but something up a lot closer and more personal, and it changes them right then and there. That's it. The only thing I can liken it to is when a pilot, and I know a lot of pilots, and they're very, right is right, left is left, up is up, down is down. What goes up must come down. Everything works the way they've been taught. And when they go to space and they're in free fall and they're looking back at the Earth, let alone being on the surface of the moon looking back at it, they're changed forever in most cases. And the way everything you expressed is what they express.
Yeah.
And people who have sightings suddenly become very interested in it. They start spending more time with it. They start researching it for themselves, and they start to find out that basically our culture has lied to them about these things, kept it swept under the rug. Don't look over there, look over here. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you've had this experience, and that it's had the effect on you that it has. So
yeah, it really has and continues to inform my life and my whole point of view about life and myself and the universe. I've heard and I'm sure you've heard the phrase that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that you've as a result of all this, you spend a lot of your time being spiritual in general. I mean, do you have practices that you like? Mary and I meditate.
I do. Yeah, I do have a spiritual practice that I'm quite active in. Um, it, it harks back to the what's called the New Thought movement back in the 19th century, where the reason it's called New Thought is because it's a whole new spin on traditional religion, and so that really informs my life now and affects my life and my actions and the choices I make and my belief about reality. And
so how does your family feel about all this? About your we'll call it possible experience. I think it's a bit, but that was what a dream.
Well, it's interesting. My mom never believed in any of this stuff, and when I once brought up the idea of alien encounters or UFOs, she poo-pooed the idea completely out of hand. Oh no! In fact, she kind of scoffed at it. So I never told her about the experience, except the week after I did have that dream, and I did fly home to visit, and I asked her point blank, "Did you dream about me last Thursday, whenever it was, on such and such a day? Did you have a dream about me?" And she said, "Oh yes, I did." And I said, "That's very interesting, because I had this very vivid dream that you were in as well, but I went no further with it. I didn't describe any of the other part of it." So I never told them about it. But
right.
in casual conversations, sometimes it would leak out from different family members about their own personal beliefs or what they thought might have been encounters, but they weren't sure. Or they, experiences with ghosts or whatever, paranormal experiences. But we never really got into it in all that much detail.
Do you find, when you're talking to people, family or otherwise, about this subject matter, that their resistance to it is more of a reaction uh, to sort of an underlying fear that they have that it could be or is real, but they do not want to acknowledge it.
Well, to be honest, whenever the subject has come up with different people, I've been very surprised to learn that they are actually quite open to the idea, and or that they've had sightings of their own. And it's not until you really bring up the subject that they'll kind of come out and admit it.
That's very true. But I think I'm thinking in regards to your mother, her reaction to it. Do you think that in her heart that she knows there's something behind it?
It's very interesting because even though she was an atheist
Mm-hmm.
and very down to earth and a humanist, she was also a very avid science fiction reader. She loved science fiction books. She loved science fiction movies. Near the end of her life, she said to me, it's very interesting, this spiritual teachings that you're into. So I think I might have been interested in learning more about that. And I said, well, now you tell me. Why did you wait all these years to tell me about that? And so it's interesting what people keep to themselves. I guess maybe having grown up in a society that unless it was a straightforward traditional religious teaching, anything else was considered taboo or not to be talked about or crazy or whatever. So,
yeah, that is it is really rather convenient for them. I mean, I wrote about that this morning. The fact that you can be religious, you can have had a visitation from an angel or the Virgin Mary, and that's fine. But if you say you saw a UFO and you saw beings in it, and let's say that's all you say, you saw beings get out and they looked around and got back in. That just it's still with a lot of people very unacceptable. But again, I wonder if it's just that they're afraid.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. Getting a lot of interesting comments over here. This has turned into quite an existential conversation, which is what the show is all about. It really is. I mean, Jon, I'm still having experiences.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times, more recently, I'll wake up remembering what happened, but I really think that most people that heard me say that would say, well, you were just having a dream.
Mm-hmm.
All the experiences I've had recently, I can remember every single one of them. In fact, I made shows out of them. And the thing is that I wake up cold, freezing on top of the covers. I've been positioned some of my covers. There's no question in my mind that I had been taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that they are capable of also just getting into your dreams. I mean, we know nothing about dreams at all. We really don't. If we really wanted to learn more about dreams, we would listen to the Aborigine people, the indigenous people of this world, because they never discounted that the dreams were meaningful and were, in fact, another life in themselves that we lived, which is highly suggestive that we leave our bodies at night and we mingle with other lives that we have out there.
Yeah. Well, in my spiritual teaching, I believe that our brains are broadcasters as well as receivers. that our brain is not just encased in our skull, but that they are constantly broadcasting and receiving electromagnetic impulses and information of all kinds. And so for you to say that, that these entities can get into our dreams, I totally agree with that. So,
yes, it's that connection we have with everything that lives and exists in totality throughout this universe and all the other ones that we're connected to.
yeah, exactly. All the other ones, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
why it's very important that as much as one may become enraged by an injustice that you bear witness to, whether it be in the news or in person, that it's important not to hate and think really bad thoughts about things, because it broadcasts, it affects everything else around you. And
yeah,
where I learned that from is from something that I think is the same experience as the visitor experience, and that's a near death experience. I think they're absolutely related, 100% related, in one and the same thing. We tend to look at even if we believe that we live beyond a physical being, we think that's something different from what we are now, and it's not. We're both. And so it's not the realm of the dead. It's the realm of the living, the existing
yeah.
consciousness.
The continuation of
Yeah.
life rather than the end of life. There's that idea that energy is never destroyed; it can only transform and
Thank you,
change.
Einstein. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh, Abbott's talking about Peter Weir's movie with David Galufil and I forget the God famous actor he used to play Dr. Kildare. Drawing a blank on. It's a
Richard
movie called
Chamberlain.
Yes, thank you. It's a wonderful film. Peter Weir makes very good movies. Everything from Picnic at Hanging Rock to uh, Master and Commander, one of my personal favorites. But um, The Last Wave is about it's kind of based on a story from the Aboriginal people about the dream time and the significance of it. As well as another film that he did, because he has an interest in it, is Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yeah,
And Picnic Hanging Rock happened, I believe, in the late 1800s or just around the turn of the century. It was about the schoolgirls, and they were at
yeah,
that rock. Yeah, and they
yeah,
disappeared. And then one of them reappeared and spoke to one of the people. I got to see that movie again. It was
yeah.
great. And that was a real case. It was a true story.
Right, right. Yeah,
But the
I'm totally fascinated by such stories and true stories that really are about unexplained phenomena that we still don't know that much about, and yet we have to accept the reality and not just dismiss it as fantasy or delusion. There's so much to our reality, universal reality, that we're only now, I think, just beginning to become aware of. And experiencers and UFO phenomenon and all that sort of thing are are little snippets or little signals that we get, little signs that we get that there's so much more around us that we can become aware of if we're open to it.
Sure, because we're already part of it, whether we know it or not.
Yeah, we're part of it, whether we know it or not. So,
Yeah. Have you had anything similar or a near death experience, or have you studied it at all?
I've studied it. I've never had one, but but I have studied it and I've read books about it and seen movies about it, and find it all extremely intriguing and fascinating, and the part of me, the non-judgmental part of me, is like, yes, this is real. I believe. So
Have you ever seen the Astral City?
the astro, no.
I highly recommend it to everyone here. Um, it was a man in South America. I forget his name. I feel bad about that. He wrote like 25 books on his experiences going to the Astral City, which is a place where we go when we pass from this physical form to the next realm. And what I found really shocking about the film when I was watching it was that there were these silver Airstream type vehicles that were sort of bullet shaped, uh, cigar shaped, with the little windows in them, all metal, that flew silently and traveled from one place to another. And I was kind of in a state of shock seeing this because I have experienced those very vehicles in my experience. In fact, Yvonne put me under hypnosis and to try to get more detail out about it. And I did get more detail about being on board the craft, and where they took me to was the most incredible, wonderful place I'd ever been. Just,
Wow.
just this amazing place. And I was, everybody there was so happy. There was no stress. The air was like a pine forest. I mean, everything about it moves my emotions even now when I relive it. And so I'm studying near death experiences, and there's a number on YouTube of people. Uh, there's a couple of podcasters or show hosts like myself that do interviews of people that have had these near death experiences, and like um, this whole experience with the visitors, it's so similar. And so looking back on those craft and where I was being taken was the same thing that people were describing in their near death experience. And that's really moved me a
Mm-hmm.
great deal because, you have an experience of something and you find out other people have too. Um, but I highly recommend that if you can, you watch some of these YouTube's interviews with people. There, a lot of them are doctors who are
Yeah,
atheists, and
yeah.
they talk, very um, bluntly about how they felt about life and death. And then there's other people that come on that work with in hospice and
Mm.
what they experienced. And all of this information that you can get from these very credible people, I think, contributes a great deal to this subject matter. I think they're one of the same.
Absolutely.
It,
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
really is fantastic. It's exciting. And because um, so many people say that we're dealing with monsters and demons and whatever else they come up with. And maybe in some cases that's true. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that many of us here have been dealing with something that exists in both realms, most of
Yeah.
this in the non-physical realm. It was so amazing to hear people describe, and what I remember being there myself is that you can look down at yourself. There's people walking around. Mostly we don't talk. It's all telepathic, but you feel like you're talking.
Yeah.
You walk over to somebody and you'll think. And like I remember, I'm walking along after I've been brought there, and I'm doing another short film, and it's about that experience. That's hopefully going to be up in the next few weeks. I remember walking along, and these people are brushing by me, and I'm looking at all these different people, and I see this guy in the park. There's a park there, sitting under a tree, and he's got these dark eyes and this hairy face with the hat on, and I, I and I and I I'm just looking around. I thought to myself, I'm not on Earth. And this guy passes me and he says, no, you're not. And he turns around and he looks at me, and I could see he was humanoid, and I could see a transparency in his skin that allowed me to see the structure underneath the skin. It was kind of spooky, but not really, because the vibe I got from him was he wasn't threatening in any way, shape, or form. He just looked so different. But I remember him saying to me, no, you're not. I'm not on Earth. And that's in the beginning of my film that I did back in 2017 called But Something Is There. But I never was able to really replicate in that film what that experience was really like. I'm able to do that now. So every day I'm sort of working on it. And I'm looking really forward to doing that one and seeing if anybody else picks up on that experience and comes forward as they know about that place. I called it the park. And I've been there more than once, and I realize that now, because after my dad died when I was 14, I sat on a bench and talked to him there.
Huh.
Yeah. If you had any dreams like that, do you have any recollections of a place like that?
Not that I can recall offhand.
Yeah.
I do. What I'm finding gratifying is that these experiences seem to be so much more commonplace than we once thought. And I find that amazing. And again, very gratifying that, hey, as a human race, we have so much more in common experientially than we sometimes think. And especially in these other kinds of realms or dreams or experiences, and that they're not all that necessarily uncommon, but we've sort of been raised and taught and indoctrinated to discount that possibility or probability. So,
imagine, and I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's in the millions and millions and millions of people that have not just experiences with the visitors or lights in the sky or lights coming into their room at night and stuff, but these other experiences, near-death experiences. There's another way you can have a near-death experience without dying. It's when somebody else comes to you who has died, you didn't know, and they come into your dream. That happened to me.
yeah.
And I experienced the whole thing, and it was just amazing. And imagine if suddenly, most of the population of the planet Earth realized what you just said, and we started sharing and having a dialogue between each other about these things, how it might change us.
Right.
Knowing that you don't cease to exist the minute that the electrical activity ceases to function in your brain might have a pretty positive effect on human beings' outlook in life. I'm looking for another tissue. There it is. Excuse me for my runny nose. So I just think it would be a beautiful thing. And maybe that is what's happening now. I mean, we obviously, Mary was talking about this morning, and some other people I know were talking about it. In fact, I think it was Earl Grey Anderson. It was that more and more of us are coming together and sharing this experience.
Well, the next time that I get together with my group that that's interested in this kind of subject matter, I'm going to suggest that maybe we could get together and do a Skywatch one night.
You should do that.
Yeah.
And you know, just for the heck of it, take a video camera with you or something. You never know. Mary and I talked about that. I'm doomed. We're going to do that very thing you're speaking of, and I am going to take out a star scope and a high end cinema camera just in case. But I know that the only thing it'll be good for is being able to look at it again and share it with people that I know, because no one will believe it's real because it came from me.
Because it came from you.
Yeah, sure. Because they know darn well that I can fake something like that. I would never do that. I would never do that because of my background in Hollywood and in visual effects. But the thing is that the people that automatically say that should know that there are people who can take any footage that you or I shoot and analyze it and absolutely confirm its authenticity. That's just science.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for me, I no longer, all these UFO images and things that we see, I no longer can completely trust, because CGI has become so sophisticated in replicating these images. It's like, well, is it real or is it Memorex? And I just really can't trust any of these UFO pictures that I see that people post.
Well, I've seen a lot of them, and I'm pretty good at what I do. And when I see them, as good as they are, I know they're fake. There's something about the animation and the movement that it's obvious to me that people who are doing these things are not people who have these experiences. They're not people who have actually seen these craft in the sky and what they can do. Because if they were part of this and did have these experiences and they did see real UFOs, they wouldn't be faking them in the first place.
Right.
So it's real blatant that the movement in relationship to the aircraft that are allegedly following them. Like sometimes you'll see F-15s chasing a UFO, and again, these are people who never flown an airplane and don't really know what makes an airplane work. And you can just see, whereas the public might be fooled by it, there's a lot of us that would never be fooled by it. But it is a problem. It is a real problem. And there are some very good videos out there that they're the real thing. They absolutely are the real thing.
Yep.
So, wow. This has been a great hour. This has been really just nice talking to you about getting your whole take in your dream, which, that's
right.
I don't think it was a dream.
My quote unquote dreams, whatever it was, more than just a dream, I think.
Yeah. Well, let us know if you do go out and we call it a CE5. We go out and I haven't done it in a long time, but we're going to do it soon. But you go out and you try to attract something, and you can do that through meditation or just sitting back in your chair and thinking about it. And it's amazing what you'll see. Besides, you deserved, after all this time, to see something in the sky that isn't art.
See something in the sky that looks real. That's not in a dreamlike state. So.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to do that. So.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask Jon right now, now's the time. We've got a couple of minutes left, and then we're gonna go home. And I know every night I go out. You're saying they enjoyed it very much, Jon. I know every night I go out at least for a few minutes, if not longer, and I look at the sky. I don't have any trees over my backyard, so and we do have light pollution, but it didn't prevent me from seeing a big triangle.
I dated myself with a Memorex comment. Well,
Memorex comment.
Well, I've lived quite a few decades now, so yes.
Okay. Well,
All right.
it's
Thanks
been
again,
great, John. It
Steve.
was really nice to see you again and to talk to you and stay in touch and let us know how your outing goes. I'm really curious to see what happens. I'm sure if something spectacular happens, you're going to let me know.
Well, we have a front patio in our house, so I may go out to the front patio tonight and start looking.
Oh, okay. Well, please stay in touch and let us know what's going on because
okay.
Your dreams, if that's what they were, are pretty amazing. So,
well, thank you again for having me on. So,
you betcha, and thank you everyone here. We really love you a lot, and we appreciate you so much. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Oh, you left.